This week on the Animation Station, we're joined by Cloud City Cast and Jerrod Maruyama from the Squared Code podcast to talk about Studio Ponoc's first ever film, Meari and the Witch's Flower. Now, this is a spoiler-heavy episode, so if you haven't seen the movie, well, go see it. What are you doing?
All right, Josh, what are we doing here, dude? You want to kick it off?
Do I want to kick it off?
Yeah.
I mean, I can kick it off with welcome to the Animation Station podcast episode
186.
Holy
Correct.
moly.
Yes.
My name is Josh,
I'm Gavin.
and today we're joined by a very special guest, Mr. Jerrod Maruyama. How you doing, Jerrod?
Hey, good to be here. I'm glad you guys finally scraped enough money together to afford to have me on the show.
Yes,
and not
it's our whole-
Liam playing me on the show. That's nice.
We also have another special guest, Brittany DeCosmo from Cloud City Cast,
Hello, everyone.
and Remy DeCosmo from Cloud City Cast.
Remy, say something. He literally just gave you
The
like a
crickets.
death stare. He's like, I'm gonna let my father take this
You
one.
can't ask Remy to do anything. He does quite the opposite.
Right.
And on today's episode, we're going to be
Oh,
talking...
come on now, Josh.
Oh, yeah, and Liam's here.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I'm here too.
You're friends, too.
I'm friends.
Welcome, Liam.
I'm friends
Welcome,
too.
Liam.
Thank you. I'm friends too.
And on this week's episode, we're going to be talking about Studio Ponoc's first ever animated film, Meari and the Witch's Flower. So, Gavin,
Yes.
how did you hear about this movie?
I heard about this movie from a very educational post on the Animation Station podcast Instagram feed. This one came out, I was blindsided by this
So,
one.
real, you heard about it on Instagram?
Yeah,
Where did you hear about it from?
on the Animation Station
Plug
podcast Instagram.
No, I actually plug it to the Animation Station podcast.
Animation Station. What are you saying?
God, you suck at this, man.
Everybody knows there's an at in front of it.
Yeah, and maybe not. People don't
I
know
don't.
Instagram.
I don't. It's
On
my
at
first time.
Animation Station podcast Instagram. What I was saying is this one really came out of the blue for me. I had no idea that this one was on the horizon, and as soon as you put up that post, I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm in." Anything like that I can do, I'm always excited about. How did you guys hear about it?
Jerrod.
Oh, I get to go?
Well, the guest
I was
actually wanted on the show.
gonna do that. I was gonna say, and what about you, Jerrod? But then Gavin just kind of pulled the rug. So.
All right, I'll just make sure to speak over Brittany and Liam every time.
That's good.
Yes.
Sweet.
I heard about it. I can't remember where I heard about it. I heard about it a while back when they were starting it because of the association with the Ghibli Studio stuff. And then more recently because of the Fathom event, relentless advertising about the showing. But I don't remember where that it was an article or something about that some, studio where they came from, Ghibli, was creating their own feature. So that's where I heard it.
Liam and Brittany.
Brittany, go ahead. I
Oh.
think you actually found out about this before I did anyway. So
But I think it was at the same place. I feel like it was at our movie theater that we frequent so often. Probably when we went to go watch maybe Star Wars?
yeah,
maybe
it might have
before
been in
that.
December.
Oh,
Because I think we saw, because they had one of those standees in the movie theater, and I'm pretty sure I was like, ooh, Kiki's Delivery Service is coming back. And then I was like, oh, wait, no. This is a different witch.
It might have been a little
Yeah.
bit earlier. Whatever movie would have been before Star Wars.
Coco. And then before
Coco.
that was Thor. So.
Yeah, I'm thinking
Coco.
Coco. They had the little, like you said, they had Kiki up there. So.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I
when
feel like the movie poster for it, when I first saw it, I thought for sure it was a sequel to Kiki's Delivery Service or related in some way because it does look very reminiscent.
oh yeah, looks like Studio Ghibli animation all the way.
Now, we saw the English voice cast. Did you guys see the English or the Japanese voice cast?
always dubbed. Always dubbed.
Nice.
Thank you, Jerrod.
I'm sorry, not dubbed. Always the subtitles. I went for subtitles.
Okay.
Oh, well, no, you're just right.
Sorry.
What about Cloud City Cast?
See, we were going to do the subtitled version, but it was actually cheaper. So we were like, well, we could pay more money and feel less educated, so let's go ahead and do that. So we went with the dubbed version.
Nice.
Because unlike the rest of you cool cats, we had a 3-year-old in tow, and we were like, I just don't think he's going to feel quite as engaged.
No, we say that, and we find him watching YouTube videos of a show called Mini Force. Not sure if you've ever heard of it. It's okay if you haven't. It's on Netflix. And he watches the Japanese version of it. And we ask him, do you want to go watch it on Netflix in English? And he goes, no. Because he doesn't know what the heck we're asking him.
No.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, if you get a chance,
amazing.
check it out. It's like they took every 80s television show and just crammed it all into one.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah,
Nice.
it's great. But yeah, no, we ended up going with the dubbed version. Was there a subtitled version available? Oh,
it
okay.
was either a 7 o'clock or an 8 o'clock.
And that was it?
Yep.
And I was choosing the dub because I do not read subtitles.
Well, you don't know how to read, so.
Truth.
Ooh.
I saw Kate
even
Winslet
lie.
and I was like, click. So that's why I got the dub. Plus, I prefer dubs over subs. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that prefer the original language over the American dubbing of it, or the English dubbing of it. But I myself prefer dubs, just because that's my native language. So I kind of go in more with that. And it's not like, because I mean, we've talked about it before, like, it's not like the dubs from the late 80s and early 90s where they're just bad.
Garbage, yeah.
I mean, dubs now are, really, really good.
See, my problem with watching a dub for the first time I view a movie, or a subbed, I'm sorry, is that I get so engrossed in the artwork and the animation that I miss words that are going by in the bottom of the screen. I can't look at the movie and read the movie at the same time. I don't have that talent. And so the first time I always watch dubbed if I can. And then subsequent viewings, I do, like Jerrod, prefer the subtitles because I think the original form is almost always superior. And, but I'm glad we saw it in English so that I could look at the beautiful, gorgeous, amazing artwork in this film.
Or you make a mistake and you're going to go watch Your Name and you accidentally buy the sub tickets instead of the dub tickets.
Yeah, we did make
and then
that
you're
mistake.
like, oh, oops.
Or no, wasn't it the theater? They
Yeah,
changed
the theater.
time
Yeah, the
without
theater
telling
changed
us?
it.
That was a hard
Jerks.
one to watch with subtitles though, because that was a very dense movie to watch with all of that stuff
Agreed.
flying by. So yeah, that was harder.
Agreed.
So wait, Jerrod, why always subs for you?
Because I think because I want the original thing kind of first, and I think it happened before, especially with these the animated films. I saw a subtitled one first, and then I saw the same version with the dub, and then you can't quite go back. Like, it sounds weird to hear these American voices coming out of what you first associated with these Japanese characters and stuff. This one's a little different because it's supposed to take place in I guess, England or something like that.
Yeah.
Or,
Right.
It's not like Japanese characters. So I think there's less of a detachment there. If I were to see the dubbed version, I'm going to mess that up the whole night here. But that's usually why. Yeah.
So let me ask you guys a question. When you hear a Japanese language animated film like this, and it's set somewhere like England, do you guys have enough of an ear for the Japanese language to be able to tell if they're doing an English accent in Japanese? Like, is that a thing? Like, are they doing that?
I've never been able to differentiate, because I've watched a lot of subs. I've never been able to differentiate an accent. I mean, there's sometimes when you can get like a Kansei accent from like something from like Osaka or something like that. You can hear the Japanese dialects, but I've never heard them try and do like Russian or English or
What about you,
anything
Jerrod?
like that.
Did it sound like they were doing an English accent in Japanese?
There's no way I can tell. Like, I don't know the language enough to be able to pull that up. But I've often wondered that if there is I mean, I'm sure there is within Japan, like, the dialect itself. But when they're doing, like, say, an American accent, I don't know if that, I can't tell. Yeah.
They just turn it into a southern drawl because for them it's always like South, like Midwest in like styled accents. So that or the really intense New York accents.
That's what I usually hear is New York. Yeah, that's
right.
fun.
Like if they're trying to affect a certain thing. And honestly, I always think it's kind of interesting because I don't know if it's like nationalism in my own head, but I always do think it's kind of weird to hear like English accents when it's like the American dub. So it's, like if I watch Ponyo, right, and it's American accents, obviously other than Liam Neeson, and I guess Cate Blanchett, right, as the mother. But Ponyo and Tina Fey and Noah, Cyrus, like all of them, like obviously full on American accents, and I think it would have thrown me if they were like all British, because it's just like, oh, it's Americans overdubbing a movie that's taking place in Japan. That's fine, I don't know. I think with this one, if they hadn't kind of drummed it into our heads that like, hey, this is taking place in Great Britain, I think I would have been a little bit thrown by the British accents otherwise.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, it's always a dangerous game with the dubbing. We can all remember Billy Bob Thornton in Princess Mononoke. It's dangerous.
The greatest casting choice
of
all
time. No, opposite. The thing about this one, though, is I was actually completely impressed by the voice acting in this one. I felt like they did a wonderful job with the casting, and I mean, I just thought it was fantastic. And I usually have many criticisms of the dubbing. In this one, I don't think I could think of a single one. I thought it was really, really well done. So I appreciated that, but I am interested in hearing the original language the next time I view it.
Did they use anybody famous for this dub?
Kate Winslet,
Kate Winslet
was Madam.
And, what's his name?
From Harry Potter?
Jim Broadbent.
Yeah.
And then the girl from the BFG.
Yeah, the little girl.
They were
Ruby.
amazing.
And Andy Serkis's son.
Yeah, I thought that was really
Yeah.
cool. That it was his youngest was the voice of Peter. No, I thought it was kind of interesting, interesting casting choice to have Jim Broadbent. Obviously, because this is a movie based on a school of wizardry and witchcraft, and then to have him be one of the voices of a professor. Because the whole time I'm just sitting there being like, it's Slugworth or whatever his freaking name was.
Slughorn. It was close.
Slugterra or Slugger.
Yeah, Slugger. Professor Slugger.
Professor Slugger
From Harry Potter.
Right.
Harry
Perfect.
Potter. I have no idea.
Yeah, Professor Harry Potter, right? I'm right.
Yeah.
I've seen these movies. I've read the books. I understand. No, but I thought that was an interesting choice. I thought Kate Winslet, I think for me, was the most impressive. I think going from the like the overly enthusiastic, inviting professor, and then turning on her head and becoming almost like this villainous headmistress. I thought that was a really interesting choice, and I also thought that her execution was on point. I thoroughly enjoyed her. What about you, B?
Oh, I loved it. Okay, so I lied when I heard about this movie.
You lied?
Yeah, because I watched an interview with Kate Winslet like a while back on one of the many morning shows that are on, and she was talking about all of the upcoming things, and she mentioned this one, but I had no idea what she was talking about. And now I put it all together as you're talking about her right now.
There you go.
So yeah, so it's been out there for a while.
Cool.
And thanks to Kate Winslet.
Okay, so you guys ready to jump into the movie?
Sure.
Yeah.
So you guys want to talk about
Okay.
the ending first?
Yeah, that's what we usually do on this show. But Meari, like I said before, Meari and the Witch's Flower is Studio Ponoc's first animated film. It is based on The Little Broomstick by Mary Stewart, the novel.
So sorry to interrupt again. Did you guys get a little interview with the producer and the director at the end? Did you guys all get that in your thing? So did you did you notice when the producer was talking and he said when he was explaining the choice of Ponoc as the title for their studio, the subtitles spelled it out Ponotch. So it would be Ponoc. And I thought that was really weird because then when you hear him say it, he still says
he says knock.
He says Ponoc.
Yeah, that's
Ponoc, but but the phonetic spelling in the subtitle said Ponoc. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and I don't know Croatian well enough to be able to discern if it'd be one or the other. But I thought that was really cool that they did that. This was midnight or like the start of a new day. So I like that with this being their first film. This is them kind of starting anew, and I thought that the storyline for this kind of mirrored that really well. So I thought that was an interesting choice, that this was the first story they wanted to tell.
And right before I was interrupted by Liam, it's directed by Hiromasa Yanabayashi.
Nicely done.
There we go. That's all I had. Okay, now Liam, you can continue.
It's interesting side note. I actually had a roommate for a year and a half who was from Croatia, and I'm still friends with him. And I will message him and find out exactly how to pronounce that word, which actually means midnight in Croatian.
Yeah.
I thought that was a cool reasoning that they had for naming the studio Midnight, because they were leaving behind the old day and starting a new day. I thought that was a really cool, smart choice for a studio name that was, symbolic and carried some meaning for the people that, started it. So.
And I guess we didn't really talk about the studio too much. It was founded in 2015 by Yoshiaki Nishimura, who previously worked at Studio Ghibli and did The Secret of Arrietty, or Secret World of Arrietty, and When Marnie Was There.
Right.
So he broke off after Miyazaki had said that they weren't going to be doing any more feature films, and so he got a bunch of his people that he worked with at Ghibli and brought them over to start the new company.
Yeah.
Which is a really nice story. And then, Miyazaki's like, oh yeah, we've got one more. I thought that was a nice little, oh yeah, by the way, we have one more film for you.
Right. So, right out of the gun, this is pretty impressive for technically a new studio. They basically took a lot of their existing talent and brought it over to this new studio. What was that?
There's a dinosaur.
There's a monster.
Amazing.
Yeah, Brendan's really getting into it.
But even with bringing new talent in, it's so impressive that they were able to do this on their first outing.
You're welcome, listeners.
Well, no, but you're right with like the talent acquisition that they had, the way that the animation was done. I felt like this story, visually, the way that they executed it, had a lot of elements from a lot of Studio Ghibli films. Like there were a lot of things where I was like, oh, that's very Spirited Away, or oh, that's very Howl's Moving Castle, or that is very Kiki's Delivery Service. So I thought that was really interesting stylistically. I think for me, the way the movie started, I thought was really, really cool, with the whole the school is burning and this
that
unnamed
awesome
witch
chase
is trying
sequence.
to escape with the little old school Robin Hood money purse of something, and then just the suited soldiers suddenly get turned into these weird pelicans that are chasing her down. All of that, I was like, oh, this movie's gonna be great. This is gonna be really intense. And then the next hour was just super low key, hey, here's some kids and she's mad at the little boy. I just was like, wow, you guys had a really bam pow start, and then just kind of chilled out for a bit. It was still enjoyable, but that was not the direction that I was expecting after that intro. Did that catch anybody else off guard, or was I just a old crazy man?
Well, I thought it was a good setup, because it kind of makes you it makes you start guessing okay, there's this intense thing, and now we're kind of in this quiet little country cottage.
Right.
So it was kind of foreshadowing, okay, there's got to be some sort of intensity, coming to kind of wrap this all together, because we didn't know if that was beforehand necessarily or afterwards, or what that was referencing in that first scene. So I found it as kind of a good hook. And so then when it goes to the, the quieter scenes that the story then begins with, it kind of kept me interested, because I knew that there was going to be some intensity down the road. But to kind of piggyback off what you were saying about some of the similarities this had to a lot of the Ghibli films that we know and love already, I found that was true, but I also found myself thinking while watching this movie that it didn't feel like any Studio Ghibli movie I'd ever seen. I really feel like they kind of had a uniqueness to it, and I think it might be because, these people that started this studio are now out from under the umbrella of Ghibli, and, those three guys that started it, they really influenced all of it and put their mark solidly on every film that they did. And so it's almost like their catalog of films is almost their personal portfolios. And I feel like now the students are kind of, out from the master's studio and they're doing their own thing. And I felt like, it was a really unique experience when comparing them to Ghibli things, even though there were some similarities. What did you think about it, Jerrod, compared to the Ghibli movies that you've seen?
I think I would agree with Liam in that I think there were a lot of sort of out and out like comparisons. And I don't know if we're looking for these things because we know that these people came from the Ghibli studio, so we're highly aware. But it's kind of a testament to the originality of the Ghibli films that, I think, like little things. So like when she came into that house, to her grandmother's old house, and that little flame kind of talked and danced and moved to the things, very cute. But then you kind of think, well, they kind of did that better in Howl's Moving Castle by giving that kind of fire character a personality. So it's little things like that, I think, where it's charming, but it doesn't elevate it beyond sort of some of the things Ghibli has already done very well. So one of the best things I think that this one did was the lead character I thought was appealing. And that's the main thing. And if she wasn't an appealing character, I don't know that I would have gotten through this whole film. So I think you look at like the sort of the highs and the lows, and you're hoping the highs outshine some of the either the slower parts or just the less successful story elements.
So speaking of Meari, do you guys want to go ahead and talk about characters?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so what did everybody think about Gavin? Let's start with Cloud City. What did you guys think of it? I said Gavin, didn't
Gavin.
I? What did you guys think about Gavin? Did you like him? Kind of like, maybe not.
What does everybody think about me, real quick?
It's going to be rough.
And then we'll go Jerrod, and then we'll go Josh, and then we'll no, but what do you guys think about like the character designs?
Okay, so this movie, I know we've just talked about it, either feeling like Studio Ghibli or not feeling like Studio Ghibli. It did. It felt like Studio Ghibli. Honestly, I could take this film and it could be in the Ghibli catalog because the animators come from Ghibli. The style is the same. I thought Meari looked so much like Ponyo, but she also... the style kind of could look like Kiki just because she is a witch. You're thinking, Kiki's Delivery Service. So any character or any of the like the beginning sequence, you touched on those flying things that they're like water, flying things. That looked like Howl's Moving Castle to me, but also looked like Ponyo. So I feel like the characters are beautiful because I love Ghibli animation. So they didn't miss anything. Like they didn't miss the mark with this movie. I'm okay if it's exactly like Ghibli because I love it so much. But I think the character design is pretty much spot on with Ghibli. What about you?
No, I like that. I definitely agree with that. I do feel like when you're doing this style or like this style of storytelling, I think it's hard to get away from those similar like arcs, those similar character archetypes. So I think not that this film was like doomed from the start, but like this studio will always draw comparisons to Ghibli regardless of what stories they want to tell. And I think that's what caught me off guard the most is because when they did start with that very intense intro, I was like, oh, they're going like Princess Mononoke, but like to the 10th degree. So I legitimately was expecting like a much darker, more intense story. And then when they pulled it back, I was like, oh, okay, no, this is going to be very similar romp to what we've seen in the past, which isn't a bad thing because I love Studio Ghibli movies. Like I think there's maybe like one or two that weren't, like mind-blowingly amazing, but they were still good films. But I think with this one, I walked out of it like satisfied, and I don't think there was any one character that stuck out where I was like, well, that character didn't need to be there, except for maybe like Confucius the dog. Because they like introduced him real quick, and I was like, "Oh, what a cute dog!" And he has a funny face, and this is going to be great. And then it was like, "And the dog is done." And then they inserted a whole bunch of cats, and I don't know if Christina Sakura is going to listen to this, but oh my god,
she's
really
going to draw like 4 of those cats.
More cats, a witch with more cats. Like we couldn't have had one witch with a dog. Like, come on. But no.
Well, a dog can't sit on a broom.
Why not? That dog was no bigger than a cat. There's no reason
that dog was frail. That dog was like,
Fine, she could have
like,
tied
no,
it.
that dog's not going to sit on
She
anything.
could have tied it down, or she could have, like, I don't know, had a sweater and, like, tucked it in the front part of the sweater.
Yeah.
And his little face could have poked out. Same thing she would have done with the cat anyways. I mean, come on. No, but I did like Meari. I thought she was a very likable character. I liked Peter. I feel like he was a little underutilized until Act 3.
I liked Peter's hair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Peter's
I like
hair
how he
was
had
fun.
his little bang
cool
things
hair.
on the
I
side.
agree.
That was pretty
his bangs
cool.
under the hat. No, and I liked I liked the character designs. I liked Great Aunt Charlotte. Like, she was really fun as well.
She was the only for me though. She was the only one that looked like
generic.
not like she. She didn't seem like she belonged in that world. Everybody else like looked like like Ghibli-esque people,
Right.
and then there was Charlotte, and I was like, okay, Charlotte, sure, why not?
But I think she was supposed to be unassuming because you're never supposed to get the impression that, like, oh, she was the witch in the beginning. I kind of had a feeling. I was like, well, obviously, she's here for a reason. She's not just like a kindly old aunt. But I was kind of expecting that she was going to have more of a part to play. Jerrod, what about you, man? What do you thought? What were your thoughts?
So for me, like, this whole film, it not to bring it back to Star Wars.
Oh, here goes 2 hours.
It feels like this kind of felt like how I felt about The Force Awakens. Like, it's taking very familiar things and it's giving it back to you in kind of a similar way. You can still like it, but it's playing it kind of safe. And I think that's what they did with a lot of the characters, because a lot of these characters you can kind of see similarities to previous old ladies as villains, and the professor guy was similar to kind of like the Spirited Away guy. So there's like slightly familiar things, but it's still its own thing. So that's kind of how I felt about it. Like, maybe they played it a little safe for this one as their first feature, and that makes sense. So I'm kind of excited to see what they do next. But for this one, like, I think everyone served their purpose fine. I think if anything, my complaints would more be with story than specific characters.
Yeah.
But I did like Meari very much. I thought they did great with the humor and how they did her, and just like Studio Ghibli, they tend to do better with the female characters than the male. So, but I did like Meari herself.
Yeah, we were noting that when we walked out of the theater, actually, that it's interesting how most animated films done in the Western Hemisphere feature boy heroes, and most of the films that we see out of studios like Ghibli and Ponoc are featuring girl heroes. I think that's a really interesting juxtaposition when you look at those two things. And I don't really know what the reasonings are for those things. I'm sure there are some deep-seated cultural differences that would explain it, but I'm not sure what those are. What did you think of the characters, Josh?
I thought the characters were really good. I really liked Meari. I loved her hair.
It was awesome.
I thought that was fantastic. I didn't know that there was going to be a little boy character, but the moment I saw Peter. Yeah, I was like, oh, sweet, it's Katniss. The moment I saw Peter, I was like, perfect, shipping it. Like, all day long, Meari and Peter.
Nice.
Meter is going to be their / name. So I saw that and I was like, perfect, love it. I thought the cats were fantastic, especially, what's the main cat?
Tib.
It's Tib and
Tib
Gib,
and
right?
Kib.
Yeah, Tib, T-I-B, because it was Tib and Gib.
Yeah.
Gib.
And
Like
Gib was the gray cat.
Yeah, I thought Tib was great. Like, just like his like deadpan expressions all the time. I thought those were fantastic.
I thought all the pet characters were done really well.
Yeah.
I liked them all. Were you done?
Yes.
Okay. I am going to agree with everybody about Meari. There's just something about Meari.
So, dang it! I was about to make it. I was about to.
Fired.
She was a fantastic character. I loved her design. She was just so easily lovable. You wanted to root for her from the beginning. The thing that I found very interesting about her character is when you start to realize that they did a really unique thing with her, because in almost every example of a character like this who suddenly becomes aware that they can be magical or may have access to magical powers, and there's a moment where you realize where she's not interested in keeping that. Like, she doesn't want anything to do with it. I thought that was really interesting for them to do, because the whole time I'm thinking, what are you doing? Like, come on, use your powers. Like, go find more flowers. Go do, like, don't you want to do this? And then when she's just like, nah, I just want to be a kid and live my life. I thought that was a really interesting choice, and it makes the film very unique to me.
Yeah, I thought it was good because, I mean, she just liked it when people were paying attention to her. Because she kind of says in this, like, because she's clumsy, she's awkward, she says it as much, she doesn't like her red hair, and she comes to Indoor Academy, and it's like, red hair's awesome. She's a super cool witch. Everybody wants to meet her. Everybody wants to, you know, everything with her. And it's like, for me, I was like, well, this is perfect. This is exactly what she wants. And she got that one time, and that's all she needed. She just wanted that one day, that one special day for her to be like the center of everything.
Right.
And she got it. And then she was like, I don't want to go back.
Yeah.
Then she starts making fun of their voices, which I thought was really good.
Yeah, the other two characters which I really liked were the two school characters, you know, the two teachers. And I thought they did a really good job.
Dr. D and Madam, I got her name, hold on.
Something.
It's like Mumblechuck.
Yeah,
Mumblechuck.
Mumblechuck, yeah, there you go. I thought they did a really good job kind of riding the balance where they did things that you didn't like. They made them nefarious, but it didn't always seem like they were intentionally nefarious. You didn't hate them the whole time. And so there was a moment near the end where they kind of, you know, get their comeuppance and they kind of realize, we failed again, and this is probably not a good thing for us to pursue. And I liked that choice too, that they weren't just out and out villains that you hated and were doing, you know, devious things. And I thought it was fun to watch all of their magic get undone when we saw all of the creatures that they'd created turn back into their original forms and stampede off. I thought that was a cool moment. But I really liked the what was Jim Broadbent's character, the male
Dr.
teacher?
D.
Dr. D.
Yeah. Dr. D. I liked him a lot. I loved how kooky he was and his little contraptions that would, you know, save him from having to walk. His little means of conveyance. I thought those were great and inventive, and they seemed to change from scene to scene. He was in some sort of new walker, and I thought that all those designs were really fun to watch. And I liked his little crew of robotic minions. I thought they were neat. They to me were very Ghibli. So anyway, that's my 2 cents about characters.
That seems like a very Ghibli thing, though, doesn't it? To make the villain not purely evil or sort of like you can kind of understand where they're coming from. That seems like very much a Ghibli trait with all of their films. I was wondering, since we touched on this, and I haven't thought this out, so I was hesitant to say this, but I liked what you were saying about how she didn't want to keep the magic, or like that wasn't the goal for her. It was to be a powerful witch or something like that. But does that, by sort of reducing that element of the story, does it make the sort of school aspect seem unnecessary? Like, she could have just gone to these witches, but we never really get into the fact that this is a school, or like it's never takes over as. I thought it was going to be a much more Harry Potter storyline once they started showing us all the rooms and everything, and then they kind of just dropped it, and then you just see the front of the school every time.
Yeah, I had a problem with the school. That was my problem with the school. Like, we see the really cool bit. Sorry, Liam. We see the really cool bit where they're all doing, like, she's learning, she's getting the walkthrough, and then none of those kids are ever heard from again.
Yeah.
I'm like, did they all die when the school, like, blew up? I mean, what was going on with that?
Yeah, I think this is actually a great topic to transition into story. And I think this school is one of the plot devices that they could have developed a little more. I agree. And it is weird that, I mean, it was kind of lost in a lot of the action that the motivation for these teachers was to create this transformational magic which allows the students to be the best students of any magic school anywhere. You know, that's why they wanted those flowers, to give them this magical superpower. And I don't think those motivations were really made clear or really made that important in the story. And I think that did take away from, you know, my wanting to be really gripped by the story. What did you guys think about that aspect? How about Cloud City go?
Well, I would say, I know the school thing, I think it was necessary. I get that it could have just been her going over to witches and it could have been anybody just trying to give somebody all the witch's power. Is that what they were trying to do? They wanted a human to be able to be a witch. I think that's what they were originally trying to do.
Well, they wanted the flower gave them like extra power or ultimate.
Yeah, like the whole time they were transferring,
and they wanted
transforming like regular animals to magical creatures, and then they wanted to transform a human into like the ultimate magical creature,
the uber witch,
like the fairy-looking thing with butterfly wings.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So then the humans would also obtain magical powers. So they would be like, okay. So I don't know. I felt like the school was necessary to the story, for me at least, because then it did touch on that Harry Potter feel, and I liked that because that's what took me away from Kiki's delivery service. Because then it wasn't just a story about a little witch; it was more about her, the female character actually saving the day. I love that's where they went with this story, is that she did have to save the day, and it was, for me, I think the story was more about her not being happy with herself in the beginning, how she kept talking about her hair and she doesn't like the way she looks. She's going to a new school, so everything's uncomfortable. And then she kind of comes into her own because the magic helps her show her that way. And then she realizes at the end, oh, I don't need the magic. I'm okay. I feel fine with myself without the magic. So I love that she got rid of the magic at the end. At least that was my take on the story.
So I completely disagree with you, like 110%. No. I felt okay. So
That's good.
One of my favorite Studio Ghibli movies is Spirited Away, but one of the things about that film that always bugged me was the bathhouse, because it really had nothing to do with the overall story that is happening. Like, the events could have taken place anywhere, but they were like, let's make it a bathhouse. Why not? We'll have No Face give this frog person gold coins. We're not sure why, but it'll happen. And I kind of felt like the school was a similar, like, MacGuffin. Like, oh, we're going to set this up as though it's incredibly important, but then you're going to realize that it's not. I visually, I thought it was stunning. Like, especially the room of, the students where it's just, like the... people are playing different games and they're floating, and then there's a weird bodybuilder in like a no-face mask.
I like that one that like takes a dive from a diving board into the water and turns into a bubble. Yeah, that was super cool.
So like little things like that. I thought visually it was very stunning. But to me, I don't feel like it really added anything to the story. And then they sort of like steamrolled and. Not to bring this back to Star Wars, but it was kind of like Canto Bight, where it was like, hey, let's romp through this really quickly, but it has no bearing on the overall story. And if anything, by the time we get out of here, you're going to be so thankful that we're done with this sequence that you're almost going to feel relieved because it was so terrible. And I feel like this, to a lesser extent kind of had that, because they were like, oh, we're going to show you the first years. Oh, wait, you already have all this magic for no real reason other than you have a flower embedded in your hands because a cat threw it at you. Oh, we're going to take you to another room. Boom, you have all of these powers. Now these are all our amazing students that know how to disappear. But for some reason, you turned it into a tornado, so we view that as amazing. And she, instead of her being like, no, this isn't what I'm supposed to do. I'm so sorry. She's just like, why, that's only 40% of my power. I'm fantastic.
I thought that was hilarious when she was like, I'm only using 40%. I thought that was great.
But they didn't build, like, I understood that it was building her confidence.
Yes, it definitely was.
I would have preferred for her to crave that afterwards. For her to be like, I need the magic. I need that magic because that's what gave me the confidence. And then at the end, I think it would have been a bigger payoff if she had been like, oh, I don't need the magic. Because I never really got the sense that she was like hooked on it. That she was like, oh my God, I need this to survive, or I need this to feel important, or worthy of what I have. So I think the payoff at the end would have felt more satisfying had we had that build up.
I get that,
but I kind of felt like she was just like, hey, this is fun for today.
I think it's a better story to tell for kids today, to not have to crave that, to not want to be like the other person, to not want that pair of jeans because that girl has that pair of jeans, And I think that's kind of what they're doing, is they're trying to tell a story that kids should hopefully want to pursue rather than...
But I think that's what they missed. I think they needed to showcase that more, so it would have been more apparent. That's what I'm saying, is I feel like it kind of felt
I got it. I got that from the story.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, in my when I walked out of there, I was kind of like, well, I felt like we kind of missed that. But if you got it, then maybe I just was too busy eating popcorn or
You
something.
were.
I don't know.
Well, Meari, she's also not the perfect character either. She's a normal kid. And, I mean, that shows. I mean, the second she gets confronted with some sort of, like, how do you know about this flower? Or, like, where'd you find this? She's like, Peter. It's his flower. I mean, I don't know that. It's totally his flower. You know, it's his. And so she's automatically lies. And I'm like, smart. I would have done the exact same thing. I would have pinned it on somebody else. Be like, I don't know, man. I mean, that's that dog's the dog found it. I mean, go kill Hit. You know, just something like that. I thought that was good. And I mean, it does show that she is not a perfect, wonderful character. She's a normal kid who's like, oh, I'm about to get in trouble. I'm going to pin this on somebody else.
Right.
They won't know.
So I think ultimately the conclusion here about the school is that it just makes for a neat backdrop to scenes, right? Like,
Yeah.
Like they tried to make it part of the story, but it ends up not really affecting the story in a fundamental way. So, I mean, that being said, I do love the design of the school. You know, that scene that Liam was talking about with the magical student union building. I'm sure that's in all their brochures. I thought that was, you know, really cool. I liked the fact that it was this floating island in the clouds. I kind of got for a minute, like, are they trying to drop a lot of Star Wars references? Here's our third drawback to Star Wars here. This is going to turn eventually into a completely Star Wars episode.
I mean, technically, Indoor is not a Star Wars reference. It's a biblical reference.
Okay, well, for most people, it's a Star Wars reference.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying,
but then also,
technically, King Solomon goes with the Israelite army, and they go find the
Okay.
Witch of Endor, and it's literally a thing.
And thus ends Bible Hour.
There you go.
And the fact that it's a floating city in the clouds as well, I thought was another visual reference to Star Wars. And, you know, I don't know.
I mean, they did the same Cloud City in
Castle in the
Castle in the Sky.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So
and
maybe
it's
they're just
literally
referencing
a
that
castle
stuff.
in the sky.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought that was interesting that there was a couple of what I felt were kind of clear references to Star Wars. But I think the school ultimately was a very neat place to visit, so I'm glad that they did that. The other location that I loved that I feel like really did add to the story was the forest, and the idea that there's this, you know, understood rule that you don't go in there when it's misty, and, you know, somebody does and things happen, and that to me created a lot of the magic of the story for me. So I liked that element. What did you guys think?
I thought the forest was really cool. I did like that there is we know we're not supposed to go in the forest when it's misty or foggy, and she's like, you scared? And he's like, I'm going to leave.
Yeah,
and then he goes back. That's why Peter is the best character in this entire film. Just going to pop that out there. I mean, he's my boy, so I'm with him all the way. Those bangs, he wears a cool jacket and a hat, has 2 cats. That's cool. I wish I had a cat.
No,
he's got 2.
Confucius was the best character.
Is that the dog?
Yeah, the dog.
The old dog.
Yeah, he was cool. I liked him.
The dog was legit. I don't know, Jerrod. What did you think?
Well, I mean, I think nature always plays a big part in the Ghibli films too. Like, I don't think there's one that doesn't sort of address that. And I think, again, it's like there's so many good things in this film, but it's like some things are underdeveloped, and, you know, some things are kind of left hanging, and so it kind of keeps you from, like, loving this film, for me at least. But I think the most emotional part of the film for me was actually when those animals, when you kind of realize what's happening to these animals, and then when they turn back. Like, for me, that was the more so than the final scene where it gets a little confusing as to what exactly is happening. I'm like, oh, they could have ended with this animal scene and then they escape, and that would have been great. Like, just finish with that. But so that's why there's all these elements. Like, that's why the school stuff never kicked in and became sort of integral to the solution. Like, we never saw kids after that scene. Everything was always abandoned of any kids walking around. Like, you know, every time she came to that front entrance, nobody was there. And even that little
just Flanagan with his brooms.
Well,
and
here's
here's
one.
They were very
Right.
stern about people being late.
But you're telling me nobody? Just
even Flanagan, yeah.
Nobody was late.
Wait a sec. What if those students are actually the animals?
Well, that's
What if they weren't actually
No,
students
because
the
when they
entire time?
deconstruct the animals, you see the 2 animals that they try to combine.
What if they're not actually students? What if the students are not actually students?
Oh.
They're actually the animals. I mean, they're witches. They can make them appear whatever they want. And the majority of those kids do have masks on. Like, when you get into the higher level people, they all have masks.
So, under that theory, are you saying when she does the unmagic spell that they're in another part of the school, but they transformed back into animals at the same time?
They all transformed into animals.
Okay.
I think
so,
we
like,
would
there
have had
were
a
no
crap
kids
ton
the whole
more
entire
animals at that point. So,
are you kidding
I
me?
don't
They
know
had
about
a
that
billion animals.
I'm gonna go ahead and say
There were
it was
animals
just-
for days.
I think it was just underdeveloped plot device that they were just like, there's
Yeah.
kids in these schools, and now we don't need them anymore, so they're gonna be gone.
Yeah. It almost seems like a different version of the film existed, and they kind of left that in because it was cool to see all that stuff. You know, all the cool, like, the animals were sort of serving. Did you notice that? How they were like the cooks and things like that in the thing?
Oh,
Like,
that was so
That
jacked
was-
up.
that
So
was
you've got a
bad.
pig serving a roasted pig, and then you have a cow with like a slab of beef. Like, this is from my sister. Hope you enjoy her. She screamed terribly as I cut her to ribbons. Like,
So that
That's
kind of
what I
supports
mean. Maybe
Josh's
they're the
theory,
actual
actually.
Yeah.
animals. Exactly. What if they're the actual animals and they're not actually kids? They're animals.
Yeah.
What
that-
if
that
one
have
of the
been-
animals is actually Hannibal the animal Lecter, and he's in the basement talking to Clarice? Oh my gosh! No, I don't know.
Can I like mute
I think
all
it would
of
have been
Liam's
honestly. I
audio
think
for
that would
the
have been a
whole
really
entire thing?
cool thing had they actually developed that. If they were like, oh, by the way, these kids are somewhat of a success because these were animals that we turned into humans. Now we need to turn them from humans into super witches, and then
Yeah.
they could have donned capes and flown around and thrown shields at each other. It would have been great.
And
But,
they're so
I mean,
hideous and underdeveloped. That's why they have to wear those
The
Rorschach
masks.
faces.
Yeah.
dude, we've just
Right,
written
right.
a better movie in like 30 seconds. So let's,
Well, because we saw Madame Mumblechook, she turns a statue into like an actual fish. So there's nothing that could say that maybe she can turn the animals, make them look like people.
right.
Right.
Or
So that's kind of what they specialized in.
Yeah,
Or stop a
Yeah, it was all
10-year-old girl
transformation
from running
magic.
away with the flower that she needs.
Right.
I mean, just saying.
Too easy.
Too,
I like how it was
too-
like always a flower, but it was like a little blueberry.
well, like towards
Yeah.
the end when
It was
she
like
goes
a stylistic.
when she goes to
quote.
flee from Mary's house, or not Mary's house, from
Her aunt's house.
from her
Charlotte?
great aunt's house. She flees and she's like, I gotta get out of there. And Mumblechick just pops up next to her, like, I'll race you to the castle. See ya. I was just like, yeah, I guess, all right. And then I guess there's that too. But no. I was gonna say something like visually. There was a part when they were talking about the woods and like when the mist rolled in. It like the cloud cover legitimately looked like video footage of clouds. It did not
yeah.
look like it was animated. And then there was a part later on in the story where they showed
The
a couple
forest.
blades of grass.
It was the end.
Like they were right up front, and then it kind of
Yeah.
panned to what was in the background. But the plants that were up front just looked like they had photographed a plant. It was amazing. Like I almost would be hard pressed to believe either one of those sequences were animated, and that they didn't just
Right.
animate backgrounds behind like actual photographs or like CGI'd smoke or something. Because like that fog was amazingly well rendered. I was very impressed.
Yeah, I noticed both of those things. I feel like they were both CG. I don't think they were filmed in real life, but they were done in a hyper-realistic way that didn't marry perfectly with the rest of the art. And I always have a big problem with that. If you're going to use CG, make sure you marry it to the art that exists in 2D. And, so many of the Japanese studios have absolutely mastered that. One of the films we talked about, A Boy and the Beast, and another one we talked about with Padma Inverted, they both have a ton of CG mixed in with their 2D, and it is seamless. It's amazing. So yeah, those two elements kind of popped out for me. What I did like animation-wise was I did like the action in this movie. I felt like they did a really good job with it. The flying sequences and, all of the stampeding animals and, the weird black tar grab you magic that Mumblechuck would do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool. And I
She
like how it
overused
was like
that for sure.
water. I think it was water, and then like it would leave like a wet spot
Grab
Yeah.
attack,
whenever it
Steal
would
it back.
be there. That was
yeah,
super
grab
cool.
attack, steal
Steal
him
it
back.
back.
But then she
Yeah,
said it like
yeah.
80
10
times,
times.
and I'm just like, all right, Kate,
Yeah,
cut it back.
that was
a
her
little bit.
go-to.
Yeah.
That was definitely her go-to in the third act.
Yeah.
But I thought the animation of the action was done really well. I'm always impressed when, there's a lot of movement and I feel like it's animated well. And I think they did. That's one of the high points in this movie for me was that.
Oh yeah, when she
I-
hops on the deer, and it's just like in Princess Mononoke, where he like rides
Yes.
the elk. And I was just
That
like-
deer is totally
I was
a red
like,
arrow.
oh, there's another one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, we had the big, huge monster that was basically the same, like kind of like the same monster for Mononoke. Whenever that monster, like the forest spirit, when he was all Ferrari, whenever he would touch anything, like death would happen.
Yeah.
And so whenever whenever PETA monster, Peter, it's Peter. His name is Peter. Whenever the Peter monster touched
Peter.
anything, everything would turn, like it would catch on fire.
Yeah.
So I thought that was cool. I will say I hated that monster. That stupid smiley face took me out of it. I was
Yeah,
like,
what
it's
was
not
that?
threatening at all. Look at it. It's just a doofy looking thing.
Yeah, I wasn't that impressed with that part either. So let's go ahead and talk about the finish of this film, the climax.
We don't want to talk about PETA the whole time.
Yeah. How do you guys feel about the way that this film ended? How about we start with Cloud City Cast?
I liked that it ended because then I didn't have to watch Act 3 anymore. Honestly, Jerrod, they're not going to invite us back on anything. 'Cause after Star Wars,
Jerrod, you're invited on every
We're just
episode.
terrible at reviewing things. No. Okay, so I'm with Gavin. I loved the action. I think it was a good parallel to what we saw in the beginning of the film, and especially I liked with Mumblechook and Dr. D both being like, "Oh no, it's happening again! Like we failed once before, and now we're failing a second time. Like when will we ever learn? Curses!" I actually kind of liked that there was this recognition by them that they were like, "Look, we thought we were doing right, and we haven't. So now we need help to try to solve this problem." But I gotta agree with Josh. The big blue Jolly Green Giant blob was pretty. I don't know, like just underdeveloped. Like I think I would have preferred something more menacing, or I would have preferred Peter just straight up turning into like crazy butterfly demon angel, and like I would almost prefer him to seem angelic but wreaking destruction with that, because it would have been a good counterbalance to what his appearance was. But he was just like a bumbling buffoon. And I don't know, it didn't. I don't know if it was like I never really felt like anyone was in danger. I never really felt like there was a point where it's like, oh no, they're not going to save Peter, or there's no kids in this school running in terror as it's burning to the ground around them.
The animals were.
Yeah, like the animals are like, oh crap, got a jet, but like I don't know. I thought there was. I felt like there was kind of a race to the finish at that point. And they're just like, okay, we've hit the time that the time length we were trying to hit. So we've got 5 minutes to wrap this up. Let's get it going here. What about you, Bimo?
Okay, so with the monster, what I'm assuming the studio was trying to do, I don't think they were trying to turn off any kids. I think when you if you stayed and listened to the director, and what they were saying about, how kids' reception of the film and the
Right.
kids' reception of the teachers, the professors, they didn't want them to think that all adults are evil
Yeah.
in any way, that you can have bad ideas, but if you can come around, you can set things right. And I think they did that really well in that ending scene. I think the professors realized, oh, like you said, we messed up again. And then they were able to let Meari help them and let Peter help them. So I love that. I think if some people didn't stay back and listen to the director's talk at the end, I think they would feel like you feel. But because
there
I
were a
heard
bunch
them
of people
talking,
that left ours.
Yeah.
because I think because I know what they were trying to pervade to the kids.
But don't you kind of feel like when you watch a movie, you shouldn't have 20 minutes of a director and a
Right.
producer explaining the film that you just
shouldn't.
had for an hour and a half?
You should
Maybe The Last Jedi, yeah.
Right? Yeah, I actually probably would have preferred that. For
Did
that one.
it again.
No, because
Everyone
'cause
take
I
a
got it-
shot for the Star Wars references.
right? No, because I did really like that he was so passionate in the way that he conveyed his message, but it didn't that didn't change the way I felt coming out of the film, because I was like, okay, but I still felt this way about your film, but I love that you had a different passion for it than what I saw coming out of it.
Right.
And I think, Jerrod, you and I talked about this when we did the Last Jedi one. You sometimes have to recognize that certain things were not made for you. And that, like, with this film, it's not that it wasn't enjoyable for me, because I did enjoy it, but I understood that they were not trying to go towards a married 35-year-old.
Yeah, it's aimed towards the heart of a child.
Yes, exactly.
And the mind of a
Exactly.
child, for
Yes.
sure. And I think because I view movies more that way than you do, or some of you.
Well, because I'm a cranky old man, so it's,
I can watch a cartoon and it doesn't have to have the great story, as long as it looks good and it's either funny or the music's great. I'm happy.
Right.
So I think that they did a wonderful job. But I love that we did stay after to hear their story
Yes,
about that,
agreed.
to kind of show, I think, why that monster wasn't menacing, because I don't think they wanted it to be menacing
Right.
for the kids.
Gotcha. Jerrod, what do you think?
I would agree with Liam in that I think, like, I felt like what we saw, I didn't feel like that's what we were building towards. So,
Yeah.
like, say he turned into that butterfly thing, but he was like a monster and it was evil, and what they were going for was actually wrong. Like, I think that would have been a clearer thing, but the thing never took shape, and so you didn't have you're kind of like, well, what is it heading towards? I don't understand what is the danger of this thing going to be? Because it never got out of that lab, it never unleashed. We didn't really get to see what it was going to do.
Yeah, I mean, it did attack Mumblechook, and all it did was, like, suck her magic, but she was totally fine. It changed her hair color, but that was about it.
Yeah.
Right.
It took the dye out of my hair. Oh, no.
So I think it was fine, like, from a story point, was fine. Maybe the execution didn't read as sort of satisfyingly as I had hoped it would be. But I don't know if sometimes these are like a cultural thing. I think a lot of anime and Japanese films in general, they are more, they're not so specific. Whereas American animation movies in general, I think we feel like we need to have that point driven home. Like, we better here's the moral of this story at the end. And,
Yeah.
and the Japanese seem more comfortable with it being sort of like, well, we don't know what it was, so there might be a little bit of
That's a
that in
good
there.
point.
But I think this movie was probably more closer to an American animation than the Ghibli stuff was. Not that that makes it successful or unsuccessful, but it felt like they were trying to stay more linear in their storytelling than the Ghibli stuff, which can kind of go all over the place before, resting on a finish.
Right. I can agree with that. What you want me to go next, or you want
Yeah,
to go
go
next? Okay. I kind of agree with everybody. What's been said already. I feel like the ending was a bit rushed. I do, like Liam said, like the conclusions that Dr. D and Mumblechuck came to when they realized, they'd screwed up again, and maybe they were misguided in what they were doing. I do have my problems with the blob that ate Endor. I don't know that it was the most well executed or well conceived design, but I feel like it was indicated in the scene that we saw at the beginning of the movie and then subsequent flashbacks that that's what it looked like when that experiment failed, because we had that same bubbly blue stuff happening in that, and that's what lit the school on fire the first time. So I think the reason that he's unformed is because this experiment is failing. We're watching the experiment fail. So for me, it made a little more sense as to its form, but its execution, how it kind of was walking around and how it all of a sudden developed that smiley face. Yeah, that seemed a little, I wouldn't have gone that direction.
It's an
But-
emoji.
Right. And I do like the hero moment that Meari has, where she kind of realizes, oh, I can actually solve this. I don't have to have magic. I just have to leverage the magic that's around me.
Mhm.
And I liked that. I felt, again, it was a little abrupt, and then the kind of post-climax scene is, just them riding their bikes, and it's pretty
She
sweet.
made a friend, and that's all she wanted.
Right. And that kind of goes back to the whole idea of her, not caring if she's magical or not. I think this goes back to the fact that this is a crazy little adventure that a kid had, but a kid's just happy being a kid most of the time. And, not every kid is going to be Harry Potter and they think they're going to take on the mantle of, saving all of Wizard World or whatever. So I do kind of like a lot of their reasons and conclusions, but I do feel like it was done in such a compact, few minutes at the end of the film that it did kind of lack impact for me.
Yeah. I'm going to go with probably the most burning question on everybody's mind. How did Peter get his clothes back? Because, he's wearing that super cool robe, and then, Meari, wakes up, and he's like, oh, yeah, by the way, I found everything. I got it all on. I look dope. I even covered you in my jacket because I'm a baller. So he lost his hat. So, unfortunately, there was a loss.
Yeah. And she's like, we don't need no stinking magic. And then she's like, oh, wait, by the way, he still needs clothes. Boof. Done. Last bit of magic. That was all they needed to do.
That's what they used the last flower for.
The last little bulb. The last weird little water bulb. I did like that though. I did like the idea that she needed something as a catalyst to get the magic. I thought that was a really cool idea. So that it was a normal person with just a little something extra can become extraordinary. I really like that aspect of it. But I don't know. I don't know. I'm just gonna repeat myself at this point. Just not enough of a payoff for me.
I like that she saved the boy. I think that's even in the Ghibli films, that's not always the case, where we have a very strong female character, but kind of in the end, the boy kind of saves them in the end. So this was kind of nice that this was all driven by her. Everything was driven by her in the end. So even though she needed his magic to do it, she was the catalyst for the... Yeah,
it was her idea and everything. She's like, I'm going to, figure everything out. I thought that was a nice choice. I like that she had to save Peter the whole entire time too. That whole almost third, fourth act is her being like, I have to save Peter.
Yeah.
I messed up.
It. She was using that last flower to get back there and save him.
And I was worried because there's the point where they go to escape and he gets his his ankle wrapped up by the gotcha attack or grab attack. So I was there was the part of me that was like, now it's gonna flip and he's gonna be the hero and we're gonna have wasted all this time with her. So I was glad that they didn't go down that path that I thought they were going to, because between that and then when they or the sequence where they're finding all the animals that have been mutated. I was definitely a little apprehensive that I was like, okay, well, I think I know finally where this story is going. I think I understand the purpose, but I'm worried that he's now going to be the one that saves everything. But so, yeah, I agree. I was definitely glad that they flipped it and kept her kind of the focus, because let's be honest, it is Meari and the Witch's Flower, not Peter and the Witch's Flower.
It's interesting, too, that they made it that... she felt like it was her fault. It wasn't that she loved Peter or that, they developed some great relationships. She felt that she had gotten him into this trouble. And so she felt responsibility to do this, not just, a slim romantic story thrown in there for whatever reason.
Right.
For me, there was the slim romantic story because, I automatically attached to that, even though there's not anything there. I invented it in my head.
It to every film. Yes.
But, going with what you said, Jerrod, she feels it's her fault because it is her fault.
Yeah.
She is the one that causes all of this stuff to happen to him.
Well, she doesn't cause Dr. D and Mumblechuck's
no, but she causes Mumblechuck to go get Peter.
Yeah, she provides the knowledge that then makes the events unfold as they did. Yeah, you're right.
And then he lost his hat.
We've crossed the hour mark here. Let's go ahead and talk about one last little piece of the movie before we move on to our ratings. I'd love to hear what everybody thought, what their impressions were of the music in this film, because I thought it was fairly impressive. So, Liam, our musician, you want to kick us off on what your impressions of the music were?
Completely forgettable.
Really?
Yeah, not a single piece in there was enchanting, engaging, anything different than I've heard in any other animated film. No, I actually really liked the music. I was impressed. I was impressed with the dichotomy of the opening scores,
Star
where
Wars
they
music.
really did build a good amount of intensity. When that opening sequence occurs, if you really listen to the way the music builds, it creates this fabulous intensity that I think that's where maybe that's why I'm not as sold on this film, because I really thought this was going to be a different movie than what I ended up seeing. So like with that opening sequence, I was like, oh, this is great. It'll be super intense. The music is great. Like, especially when what's the great aunt's name?
Charlotte.
Thank you. When Charlotte is fleeing and the glue pelicans are coming after her, the music that's building, like the execution of the violins, creates such a beautiful tension. I absolutely love that. And then that whole kind of middle stretch, the second part of Act 1 and then all of Act 2 was very lilting. Like the music was fun, and it was kind of you could feel it was very much supposed to echo Meari as a character. And then towards the end, it kind of had that like thematic action, like, oh, and now everything is coming to a head. And I really dug that. So I think, if anything, I almost think sonically this music was more, or the film was more successful on the music side than it was in any other aspect. And this is still with me saying the voice acting was phenomenal. I think the artistic execution was great. As we said, the storyline had some opportunities, but I actually really enjoyed the music on this. I was very impressed.
Nice.
What about you, B? What'd you think?
Talking about music?
No, we're talking about peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Awesome. I enjoy peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. The music was beautiful, but I think you look or listen for to what you are, what you're inclined, I guess, to listen for.
Right.
Like, you would immediately listen to music. I would look to visuals.
Right.
The person who wants to know, have a great story told, will, look for the plot in the story.
Right.
I thought the music was beautiful. It was lovely, but that doesn't sell a movie for me.
Right.
So I enjoy the movie on its own, but I think the music is lovely. But I think most, and I know this is its own studio, but I'm going to keep going back to Studio Ghibli. I think they always do great with their music choices. Yeah. They're always beautiful, and when it's action, they just know how to purvey it. And when it's more just forestry, it's usually pretty quiet. And I don't know. I think they do a great job on music choices.
It won't sell a movie, but it will sell a soundtrack.
Truth. Hey.
Yeah, nice. It's true. What's your take, Jerrod?
I gotta admit, I'm probably like Brittany in here, and then I would have to see this film another time or a couple times to sort of get a sense of the music. Remember, I was busy reading subtitles, so that was one other element I had to think of. It didn't stand out to me particularly. I wouldn't say that it was good or bad. I agree. Like, I do like the soundtracks for these films, but I think it's going to have to settle in with me a little bit more. I think Mononoke was the only one where I really noticed the soundtrack as I was watching the film, and that still is probably my favorite soundtrack of the Ghibli films. So, yeah, I don't think I couldn't say good or bad, other than the pop song at the end was the only time I kind of perked up and like, oh, how hilarious.
Well, Josh actually doesn't believe that music exists in movies. He still thinks it's a myth. So I'll probably cover Animation Station Podcast's take on the music. I agree with what Liam said. And I thought they did a really good job with the music. I think that in an animated film, music needs to be a part of the texture, a part of the scenery, a part of the emotions of the film. But in an animated movie, I never want something as iconic as, let's say, let's continue. And let's say a John Williams Star Wars soundtrack, with those big.
You guys and Star Wars, guys. This is an anime movie. Stop with the Star Wars.
There's plenty of animation in Star Wars. I don't need those big type of, iconic musical melodies in an animation. Unless it's a musical, but this is not a musical. So we just needed texture and emotion from the music. And I think they delivered that beautifully in this film. I enjoyed it. I noted at several moments in the film how well the music was serving the moment. And I think that's appropriate for an animation soundtrack. And I too did also perk up again with the pop song at the end. I thought it was a neat song, but
let's be fair. There's no Ponyo, the little Ponyo pop
song. That was
at
very poppy.
Yeah, that's
one,
awesome.
and now that's in your head for the rest of this episode.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Earworm.
So you could have been like, Mary, Mary, she's a little friendly witch. That would have been cool. We could have gotten that.
Yeah, that would have been nice.
She's a friendly witch, but her mom's a... Wait, what? We can't even go that direction.
I'll say, going off of what I thought of the music, I thought, like, when she had that cool chase scene, like, when we had the 2 chase scenes, I thought the music was really good there. When we had her and she was looking out over the village, and she was eating her sandwich and sharing it with Tib. They had the nice little music before, it kind of, went off, and then we had like the creepy-esque music when she's just going into the forest for the first time. So I did kind of listen to some of the music.
Nice.
That was about it.
And they've got that one
nice.
sequence when she runs into Peter in the village, and then they go kill that homeless person in the alley.
Good
There's
scene.
that music sequence. That one was really crazy.
That must have been in the
Ridiculous.
subtitled. We didn't get that part in the dub.
I need to watch this movie again.
Ridiculous.
I'm just inserting my own scenes now into the film.
Nice. All right, so I guess now we'll go around and let everybody give their final thoughts and rate the movie. You can choose your own rating scale out of 5 somethings.
I do Dipper Pines.
I
Gavin
do
does Jiminy
I think
Crickets.
Cloud City does Clouds.
Well, I've
Which is
changed
weird.
mine.
Yeah,
I do up to 5 Mariamas.
Okay, very good.
Nice. All right, well, since you've got your scale already, why don't we start with you, Liam?
So for me, and as we kind of started out this episode talking that it's hard not to compare this to Studio Ghibli films, and as Brittany and I left the theater, I'd asked her, I was like, okay, well, how would this rank in your Ghibli films? And she was like, I thought it was good. It wouldn't crack into like my top 5 or anything like that. So for me, I'm comfortable giving it a 3 Mariamas. I think that it was enjoyable. Especially sonically and visually, and then obviously with a couple of plot point tweaks that I think could have been made. But keep in mind that this is the studio's first attempt at making an animated film, so I'm excited to see how they grow and develop from here, and what other stories that they decide to tell. So I think kind of a 3 is sort of that, a little bit above that mid-average of like a 2.5. So.
All right. So
right.
I was going to give it a 3, but since you gave it a 3, and I know I like this movie more than you, I guess I have to give it a 4. So Liam just pushed up my rating.
But do you feel like it was good enough to get a 4? Like,
I
when you
do.
think of like movies that you've given a 4
I
to?
do. I honestly do, because I would go and I would see it again.
I think we didn't see the same movie.
I don't
know
think
what
so.
happened.
I enjoyed this movie. We finally disagree
I
on
know, how
something. It's
exciting.
so nice. We never disagree. Now let's do this on our show.
I know. For once.
No, but I would give it a 4. 3.5, 4, but I know Josh hates those 3.5s.
Thank
so
you.
I'd rather round up than round down. So
Cool.
give it a 4.
Awesome. How about you, Jerrod?
I'll give it 3 Liam heads. I think
Those are
they
huge.
like
Can you
lemon
fit
heads?
3 of them
Very
in like
sour?
one review?
Yes, it is just like a lemon head.
I think I was entertained for this film. I wasn't, like we said with other films, I wasn't mad during this film, or I wasn't scrutinizing it as much as we're doing here while I was watching it. I was entertained, and so I would give it 3. Like, it's worth seeing. Maybe you watch it at home or rent it or something like that. I think on a bigger picture, I am excited for what the studio is going to do, and I'm excited that if Ghibli is going to stop producing films or slow down or whatever the case may be, that there is another studio that can turn out similar stuff, then I'm all for that. So from that perspective, I think it's a great start. But I think the next one maybe we can be a little harder on then.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
What about you, Gavin?
I agree with Jerrod for this studio having this be their first film.
Mm-hmm.
They had to overcome, I'm sure, a ton of challenges
And they're going to have that stigma of, it's just Ghibli
right.
again.
They're going to be under that shadow. And that being said, I kind of feel like, I wonder what it was like at Disney for those animators and animation directors to do that next film after Walt wasn't around anymore. And this is kind of similar because they left the people who were in charge of the direction and everything about these films, and they're now doing it on their own. So I can imagine there was a lot of unsure, feelings about what they were doing. That being said, I thought they did a pretty good job. I do want to mention one character which we never talked about, which was Little Broomstick. I love that character.
Little Broomstick was dope.
Was awesome.
Whenever she was like getting on Little Broomstick and she was like bouncing all over the place, I loved those scenes.
I thought it was great. That was
and we
fun.
really didn't talk about Flanagan.
No, he was great.
Flanagan was dope.
There's no depth there. He was just great.
Yeah.
I was entertained. Kind of, again, like what Jerrod said. I didn't scrutinize it while I watched it. I was entertained. Thinking about it later is when I thought the plot through and, started to find some of the lacking elements in the plot. Mm-hmm. So I think it is an entertaining film. I think it's beautiful. I think the music is great. I love a lot of the animation that's in it, mm-hmm. and I think that is key for me. I think they did a fantastic job animating it. And, if they were to work on the story a little bit, I think this could be a great, great film. So I'm going to sit in kind of in the average here, I think, and I'm giving it a 3.5 Jiminy Crickets.
Notice that Gavin had to be different and give it a point system.
They might have point systems too. They just chose whole numbers this time.
Yeah, because that's what normal people do. So for me, I really enjoyed this movie. I got what I expected going into it. I thought it was going to be a cute little story. I got a cute little story. I got a new ship. I got my either my Mita ship or my Perry, whichever one, or would it be? Well, I guess it would be Meter.
It could be Mater.
No, it would be Meter or Perry. I like those. I mean, when you have a blonde and a redhead and they get together and have cute little strawberry blonde babies, it's going to be adorable.
True. That's true.
It was funny. It was way funnier than I thought it was going to be. Mm-hmm. Like, because usually from like Ghibli films, they're not really funny. Like there'll be a couple parts, but this I was like, it was actually funny. Like there were some. Like, when she's imitating everybody, she's like, I hurt my bum. Like, I thought that, like, all that fun stuff, I was like, this is actually pretty funny. They're actually doing a really good job with this. So for that, I'm going to go with Brittany, and I'm going to give it 4 Dipper Pines.
Nice.
Wow.
Nice.
So we're all kind of in that same range, and I can't wait until we get a five-star rating out of Ponoc. I'm excited to see what they're going to do. I think they've got a ton of potential, and I think we'll all be excited to see what they have in the future.
So, do you think it takes something away from the fact that Miyazaki's now come back out of retirement to continue making films, as he's going to do an adaptation of How Do You Live?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think at some point this was going to happen anyway, and I think they're off to a good start.
I will say what I would like to see from them is because Ghibli had the whole thing of they do everything off of a book. I would like to see them do something original. Like something that's not been told.
I agree.
I would love for that to happen.
Yeah.
Well,
so if we can get that, I would love for that to be
go around
2.
though, and if everyone can say what their favorite Ghibli film is, just to sort of get a sense of. Because, like Gavin likes cars, so like, okay, there's a problem there.
Thank you. Yes, I agree 100%. Jerrod, you want to be a full-time host on Animation Station?
Been replaced, just like that. I'll go ahead and kick this one off. My favorite Studio Ghibli is My Neighbor Totoro.
Oh, wow.
I love it.
Cloud City.
Good barometer for that. Yeah. Go ahead, Bimo, you say.
Oh, okay. So mine's like Josh, 3-way ties, man. It's so tough. It's so tough. I love Ponyo because of just the feelings it gives me. But when I think to animation and story, I'm more of a Totoro and Spirited Away. Mm-hmm. So it's those 3 are just so neck and neck. I just always go Ponyo because if I were to sit down and choose one of those, I choose Ponyo.
No, it's Howl's Moving Castle. Like 110%. Just there's no. The other movies are great. Don't get me wrong, and I love Ponyo. I love My Neighbor Totoro. Like they're all great films, but Howl's Moving Castle, man, that's like it's head and shoulders above. It's so visually stunning. The story is great. The magical elements are blended seamlessly with like this weird steampunk moving castle. Like I don't know, it's 100% easily best film that they've ever put out.
Oh, I forgot to go.
Yeah.
Mine's I would say tie. I really, really love Spirited Away. It's up
always
there,
been Mononoke,
but
though.
it's Mononoke is my
Yeah.
favorite.
Yeah.
Just because it's got action, it's got cool story, it's got a dude riding an elk, it's
Red
got
elk,
an
which is
awesome character in Ashitaka.
Yeah.
I said his name right, so that's a plus right there. Yeah, I mean, and San's super cool, and there's talking wolves. I mean, what else do you want? It's got freaking talking wolves
Yeah. That's an
and
amazing
opium.
film.
So
That was a good
win.
So what about you, Jerrod?
So I think I'm with Josh actually on this, which is surprising to me. Mononoke is probably my
Nice.
favorite. It's Spirited Away is very close, a very close second. But Mononoke, I think it's all of the good stuff about Ghibli and them doing it at their best. Because I probably would have some for some reason Spirited Away, I love it, but for some reason it always feels very long to me. Like about
It's super long.
Like when
Yeah.
she's on that train in the water going, I'm like, boy, this we're not close to the resolution.
Yeah,
yet.
that just takes a long time.
I think it's like the third or fourth longest animated film ever made. It's up there on the list. It
Yeah.
really is.
So,
That's why they gave it an Academy Award. They were like,
Right.
"Oh, all right, here,
For time.
Yeah.
just to be quiet. Here's your award."
yeah. Yeah, so
Cool. Well, I
Mononoke,
think
yeah,
that-
is number one.
That's
See,
awesome.
Jerrod and I
think-
we're
I think
together.
I've got a
Gavin,
pretty-
you're off.
I'm off?
Yeah, you're done.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm out?
Yeah, you're out.
Okay.
Yeah, so
All right.
thanks so much for coming on to Gavin's last episode.
Oh,
I mean, it was really fun.
my
Jared's
work here
like-
is done. Yeah.
It was fun until the end.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well,
I
Jared
just
think
tries to
about it.
Split up quite a few many podcasts. He's always trying to recruit Brittany for a show for the two
Sure.
of them. So
I got rid of Manoa, didn't I? No.
You did. I had a
Nice-
feeling that was coming.
nicely done, sir. I didn't even hear the setup for that one. That was great.
He's actually just trying to recruit Remy. So
Yeah.
I'm
oh no, we've been
trying.
trying to
I almost
recruit
didn't
Remy.
think we were going to get Remy to come home with us after Disneyland. I was like, he's going home with Uncle Jerrod, so I'll see you when you're 18, kid.
he could take him to Disney World.
Right? Yeah,
There you
Jared will
go.
take you to Disney World. or
Nice.
My
Tokyo
carry
Disney.
on.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so Jerrod, where can everybody find you?
jmaruyama.com is my website, and then my handle is jmaruyama on everything else: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. It's all easy.
And you have a show, correct?
I do. I co-host the Squared Co podcast at I don't know. That's all it's called, and you can find it on Stitcher and iTunes and all the podcasty places. So we talk to a lot of artists and creatives, and we're terrible because we're still early on, but
not
we're having
true,
fun.
not true.
So.
No, it's super good. Don't let them fool you. The show is a
Yeah.
lot of fun, so definitely check it out. And can somebody that's artistic, Jerrod or Gavin, could you do a Maruyama and the Witch's Flower? Like, hybrid picture? That'd be amazing. If I was artistic, I would do it myself, but I can't. But now that's all I want is Maruyama and the Witch's
Genius.
Flower.
Genius.
Nice.
Thank
Oh, you could do
Yeah, I
a. You
have
could
my
do a.
moments.
There's something about Meari. Just
Yeah.
poster for this one instead.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, little parody
Josh is
poster.
always giving me art assignments.
Yeah, and then he never
We
does
all
any
try.
of them.
So, Liam and Brittany, where can everybody find you?
Fresno?
Don't tell them that. No, you could find me at Citizen of Disney.
You can find me at Liam Bright, and as always, you can check out our show at Cloud City Cast on Twitter and Instagram, or you can email us directly, cloudcitycast@gmail.com.
Sweet.
And you can find all of their episodes on iTunes and Stitcher.
You can find all our episodes in the deleted file folder of everybody else that's on this episode. No, you can check us out on iTunes and Stitcher. It's just Cloud City Cast.
Sweet.
Gavin.
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Gavin Otteson Art, on the web, gavinottesonart.com.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Josh L. Kane. You can find the podcast on Instagram at Animation Station Podcast.
On Facebook, Animation Station Podcast.
On Tumblr at Animation Station Podcast.
On Twitter, at Animate Podcast.
You can also find all of our episodes on iTunes, Stitcher, and our website.
animationstationpodcast.com.
All you have to do is click on that podcast tab. And be sure and leave a awesome like and review, or rate us and review us on iTunes.
Yep.
And definitely rate and review Squared Co. and Cloud City Cast.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, you can find Cloud CityCast website, geocities.com.
Shout out to
Their MySpace
GeoCities.
page. Yeah.
Yeah, you check out our MySpace. Now I'm going to do those things. I'm going to do it right now. I want that to be a
Amazing.
thing.
Be sure and you can dig us, I guess. Can you still dig? Is Dig still a website that you can go to and dig
know.
things up? Is that
Maybe.
it?
He is looking up geocities.com
Surely these
right
things
now.
exist still. Who knows?
I can buy geocities.com. Apparently it's not a thing anymore. Oh, well.
Well, this has been awesome. Thank you guys for spending your evening with us and talking animation. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks
Of
for having
course,
us.
thank
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, so time for sign-off. So everybody get your sign-off ready. So for the Animation Station, I'm Josh.
I'm Gavin.
For Cloud City Cast, I'm Liam.
Brittany.
And I'm Jerrod.
Bye-bye, little butterfly.
Made you look.
Try and make the world a better place.
See you real soon.
Nice.
Perfect.
I love it.
Oh.
Oh, Remy, what's your sign off?
I'm baby Remy.